Good afternoon, Mathletes and Film Majors. Today is Friday, August 3rd, 2012, and today I'm going to talk about NBC's editing of the Olympics. So for those of you watching the Olympics in the US, you're probably watching it on NBC, seeing as NBC was the one who pulled some Olympic sword from a stone and got the bid for this year's coverage. You're probably watching it on a serious delay as well, and we're talking like several hours, in which you can easily spoil yourself. Unfortunately, if you're in the US, NBC has already made some serious missteps in their coverage of the games thus far. Now, I'm not saying that this is the first time this has happened, or that NBC is the only network that has ever made such decisions in their broadcasting. But these missteps haven't been just little mistakes, like poor audio or mispronouncing someone's name. They've been huge. For the sake of time, I'm just going to stick with three. The first one is the one that I have the smallest problem with, and that was NBC's self-spoilage of Missy Franklin. If you weren't watching, it was something like this. Missy Franklin was about to compete in the 100-meter backstroke, in which she had a chance to win gold. Like in any event, winning the gold of the Olympics is kind of a big deal, and right before they started, NBC cut to commercial. Now, a lot of people have been complaining about the amount of commercials NBC has managed to squeeze into the Olympics, and I'll admit there have been a lot. But my problem isn't that they cut to commercial. My problem is what they decided to air during those commercials. Right before Missy Franklin was about to go for gold, NBC showed a preview of the Today Show with exclusive footage of gold medalist Missy Franklin reuniting with her parents. Basically, if you were paying attention, NBC told us she won the gold before she won the gold. Now that bothered me the least because that was clearly a huge mistake, and NBC is probably kicking themselves over it. Unfortunate, yes. Intentional, probably not. It's the other two things I have a problem with, because those were clearly 100% intentional. With the world so interconnected as it is today, what with Twitter and Tumblr and 24-hour news updates, it becomes glaringly obvious when some countries have seen something and others haven't. And we, as Americans, are an inherently jealous people, and we will go out of our way to find what you have denied us. So we caught on pretty quickly that NBC decided to edit out a tribute to the 7/7 victims during the opening ceremonies in favor of broadcasting an interview between Ryan Seacrest and Michael Phelps. I know it's a big deal, and at the time of the interview he was still this potential, will he, won't he, it's very intriguing, blah 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 blah. But do you know why NBC cut the tribute? They could have said it was for time, they could have said it was to highlight Michael Phelps, they could have said some other BS reason. But NBC spokesman Greg Hughes said that our programming is tailored to a US audience. It's a tribute to Danny Boyle that it required so little editing. Okay, first of all, A, it would be a tribute to Oscar-winning director Danny Boyle if you didn't edit it at all. And you didn't have to. You chose to. And B, a US audience is completely capable of appreciating a tribute to victims of terrorism. You just assumed that we wouldn't be able to appreciate it if the victims weren't ours. Cutting the tribute didn't do anything to the US audience. If we didn't know you had done it, we would have been fine. But by cutting it, you cater to the idea that Americans care more about celebrity interviews than they do about any other country that isn't theirs. Not only that, but when it makes the news, you tell the world that too. And that's not even the worst part. By cutting the tribute, you perpetuate this idea to the American public that Americans are the only ones to be affected by terrorism. That it's just us against the rest of the world, and if you're not fighting directly against us, you're just standing by and watching it happen, which is just as bad. And that could not be more untrue. It's an insult to the victims, it's an insult to Great Britain, it's an international insult to victims of terrorism, and it's an insult to us that you don't think we're capable of understanding or empathizing, and you could not be more wrong. My third problem is NBC's coverage of the team finals for women's gymnastics. My mom noticed at first that, of the three competing gymnasts, we'd only seen 2 floor routines from the Russians before the US started their rotation. I, being optimistic, assumed that in covering beams and vaults and uneven bars, we had somehow missed the 3rd Russian routine. Turns out, and don't tell her I said this, my mom was right. NBC intentionally omitted Ksenia Afanasyeva's routine. Why? The Russians ended up with a silver for the team competition, so for the majority of the competition it was the Americans versus the Russians. But during floor, which was shown last, the Russian routines that we ended up seeing had some pretty big deductions. Ksenia's, which we ended up missing entirely, had the biggest deductions of them all. Now, NBC had time to show Ksenia's routine. It's their job to make sure they have time to show it. But instead of showing Ksenia's 1 minute and 36 second long routine, NBC decided to show 1 minute and 38 seconds of the American team warming up. Now, I can go into how wrong it is to intentionally omit Ksenia's routine in order to hype up the drama. Because if we had seen Ksenia wipe out, we would have caught on to the fact that the Americans pretty much had the gold in the bag. But instead, I'm just going to say how unfair it is to Ksenia that she cut her routine, period. She is an Olympic athlete, competing in an Olympic event. You owe it to her and to everyone at home watching to show her routine. You made a bid to cover the Olympics, so cover the Olympics. Don't cover what you think the American public wants to see. Don't omit things to keep us on the edge of our seats. You are NBC, not Fox. Please, just do a professional job. As a film major, I know that editing is something that you can do magical things with, so don't do crap. I know NBC is spending a lot of money to cover the Olympics. It's expensive, but they signed up for it. So they have no excuse to cheat their viewing audience by intentionally manipulating what they see. It's their obligation to show us the Olympics, the full picture of the Olympics, and not just what they think we want to see. I'm hoping that in 2 years, NBC either acknowledges their mistakes and learns from them, or acknowledges the fact that we will catch on to what they're doing, and as a result, changes their policy on coverage. Either that, or they let someone else cover it. I want to see the Olympics, not NBC's version of the Olympics. I want the director's cut. Is that too much to ask? No, it's not. Please. So for the film majors, I'm Caitlin. For the Mathletes, who's going to be here on Monday, and for everybody else, thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you next time. Bye!